I went back because I'd forgotten my reading glasses on the kitchen table. Such a silly old lady thing to do, I thought to myself as I walked along the stone path back toward Roberta's house. My footsteps sounded louder than usual in the late afternoon silence. As I approached the half-open window, I heard something that stopped me in my tracks. "Don't you worry, babe. Your mother's house will be ours soon." It was my son-in-law, Samuel, speaking in a tone I'd never heard from him before. "She won't even have the money to hire an attorney. Old folks like her don't know a thing about these legal procedures." My heart started beating so fast, I was afraid they might hear it from inside. I stood motionless, pressed against the wall, as the words continued. "I've already checked everything, Mom. The will is in order, and with the documents she signed last month for the mortgage loan, we're practically doing her a favor." My daughter Roberta's voice sounded cold, calculated. "When she can't make the payments on the loan we took out in her name, we'll show up as the only available heirs to save the situation." I felt as if the ground were moving beneath my feet. The loan they'd convinced me to sign a month ago, telling me it was for a family investment, for my grandchildren's future. The papers I'd signed without fully reading because I trusted them. "What if she suspects something?" Samuel asked. "She won't. She's 70 years old, Samuel. At that age, they don't process information like they used to. Besides, she's always trusted me blindly. I told her the loan was to buy a bigger house for all of us, that we would live together. She got so emotional she signed without asking questions." My daughter's laughter sliced through me like broken glass. It was a laugh I'd known since she was a little girl, but now it sounded different, hollow, empty of any affection. "The best part is that she's making it so easy for us," Roberta continued. "Every time she comes here, every time she cooks for us, every time she watches the kids for free, she's showing everyone what a united family we are. When the time comes to present the case to the judge, we'll say she can no longer take care of herself and that we've been taking care of everything." My legs trembled. All those afternoons I spent watching my grandchildren while they went out. All those dinners I cooked because I thought I was helping them. All those times I cleaned their house because I thought I was showing my love. The attorney assured me that in cases like these, where there's evidence of mental deterioration in elderly people, the process is pretty straightforward, Samuel said, especially when direct family members show genuine concern for the senior's well-being. Mental deterioration. The words echoed in my head. Me, who still read 3 books a month, who solved the hardest crosswords in the Sunday paper, who had managed my own finances since my husband passed away 10 years ago. "How long do you figure the whole process will take?" Roberta asked. "According to the attorney, somewhere between 6 months and a year. By then, she'll have already lost the house due to loan default. We'll buy it for a fraction of its true value, and we'll be the legal owners. Clean and legal. Perfect. And in the meantime, we keep up the Loving Family Act." I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. The cool evening air filled my lungs, and with it came a clarity I hadn't felt in years. For a moment, I just stood there, processing every word, every detail of their plan. Then I carefully backed away from the window. My steps were silent on the grass. When I got to my car, I sat in the driver's seat without starting the engine. I needed to think. My phone vibrated, a text from Roberta. "Mom, did you find your glasses? I saw them on the table, but when I went to tell you, you were already gone." I smiled for the first time all afternoon, a smile she couldn't see, but one that gave me the first hint of satisfaction I'd felt in a long time. I wrote back, "Can't find them, honey. Maybe I left them somewhere else. Don't worry, I have a spare pair." It was a lie, but they had lied to me too. The difference was, I had just discovered their game, and they had no idea the cards had changed hands. I started the car and drove slowly toward my house, the same house they believed would soon be theirs. For the first time in months, maybe even years, I felt completely awake. Everyone was going to be surprised by what I did next, especially my darling daughter, Roberta. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake in my bed, staring at the ceiling of the room I had shared with my husband for 40 years, remembering how I'd gotten here. Everything seemed so different now, as if I were seeing my life through a foggy glass that had suddenly been wiped clean. I remembered the day we bought this house. It was 1978. I was only 25 years old and had just married Roberto. I worked as a secretary at a construction company, and he was a civil engineer. We saved every dollar for 3 years to make the down payment on this small 2-bedroom house in the suburbs. The mortgage was $200 a month, a fortune for us back then. Roberto used to say this house would be our castle, the place where we'd raise our children and grow old together. He was right about the first part. Roberta was born here, in the room I now use as my study. It was a complicated birth, and the doctor told me she would likely be my only child. That made me care for her even more, maybe too much. During the first years of our marriage, Roberto and I worked like busy bees. He was at his engineering office, and I was taking care of the house and raising Roberta. When she turned 5, I got a part-time job at a clothing store. We religiously saved every extra dollar. We wanted to give our daughter everything we hadn't had. Roberta was a beautiful, smart girl, but she was also spoiled. When she wanted something, she would cry until she got it. Roberto used to tell me I was spoiling her, but I couldn't resist those teary eyes. "She's our only child," I'd say. "She deserves the best." By the time she was 10, Roberta had learned to manipulate me perfectly. If she wanted a new dress, she'd tell me all her friends had nicer clothes. If she wanted to go to a party, she'd assure me she'd be the only one not going, and that would make her the weirdo in the class. She always found a way to make me feel guilty if I didn't give her what she wanted. Roberto passed away when Roberta was 18, a sudden heart attack while he was reviewing some blueprints at the office. Overnight, I was left alone with a daughter who was about to go to college and a house that still had $10,000 left on the mortgage. Those were difficult years. I had to work double shifts at the store to keep up with the mortgage payments and Roberta's college expenses. She studied business administration at a private university that cost $5,000 a semester. I worked from Monday to Sunday to pay for her tuition, her books, her clothes, her car. "Mom, you know that when I graduate, I'm going to get an excellent job and I'll pay you back for everything," Roberta would tell me whenever I complained about being tired. "This sacrifice is worth it. Think of the future we're going to have." And I believed her. I worked at the store during the day and cleaned offices at night. My hands became rough. My back started hurting all the time. But every time I saw Roberta with her college books, in her nice clothes, with her high-class friends, I thought it was all worth it. When she graduated, she got a job at a marketing firm. Her first salary was $3,000 a month, way more than I had ever earned. "Now things are going to change, Mom," she told me the day she got her first paycheck. "You won't have to work so hard anymore." But things didn't change. Roberta moved into an expensive downtown apartment. She needed business clothes, a new car, money to go out with her colleagues. "It's an investment in my career, Mom. You have to understand that in this world, you have to look successful to be successful." I kept working double shifts. The only difference was that now, instead of paying for her education, I was lending her money for her professional image expenses, loans she never paid back. At 28, Roberta met Samuel at a business conference. He was a financial advisor and had his own firm. "He's perfect, Mom," she told me when she introduced him. "Stable, hardworking, and he understands my ambition." Samuel seemed nice at first. He spoke well, dressed elegantly, and seemed to love my daughter very much. When they got married 3 years later, I paid for half the wedding, $25,000 I took from my life savings. "This is the last big expense you'll have for me, Mom," Roberta promised me while trying on her wedding dress. "After this, Samuel and I will take care of everything." The first few years of their marriage seemed happy. They had 2 children, Robert, named after his grandfather, and Carmen. I became the grandma who was always available. I watched the kids when they wanted to go out. I cooked for the family on weekends. I helped with schoolwork. "You're the best grandma in the world," my grandchildren would say. And I would melt with happiness. I finally felt my sacrifice had meaning. But something had changed in Roberta after she got married. She had become colder, more calculating. When I asked her to pay back some of the money I had lent her over the years, she would say I was being petty. "Mom, I'm your only daughter. Everything you have is going to be mine anyway. Why are we keeping a ledger in the family?" Samuel had changed too. At first he treated me with respect, even affection, but he gradually started talking to me as if I were a burden. When I'd arrive at their house, I would hear him sigh. When I offered to help, he'd tell me I didn't have the energy I used to. Last month they came to visit me together. It was strange because usually Roberta came alone. They told me they had a proposal that would thrill me. "Mom, we want to buy a bigger house for all of us," Roberta said with a radiant smile. "A house where we can all live together, where the kids can be close to their grandma, where you don't have to worry about a thing." Samuel spread some documents on my kitchen table. "We just need you to sign here to apply for a mortgage loan on your current house. With that money, we'll buy the new house and we'll all live as one big happy family." The idea excited me so much that I barely read the documents. A big house where we could all be together, where I wouldn't be alone, where I could watch my grandchildren grow up every day. I signed without asking questions. Now, lying in my bed, I understood that those documents weren't for buying a family house. They were to steal my own. The following days were a silent torture. Every time Roberta called or came to visit, I had to act as if nothing had happened. But now, every gesture of hers, every word, every smile seemed false and calculated. On Tuesday morning, she came to my house with the kids, as she usually did before dropping them off at school. Robert was 8 and Carmen was 6. They were beautiful, innocent, and it broke my heart to think they were being raised by a mother capable of planning something so cruel. "Grandma Lords, will you make us pancakes?" Carmen asked in that sweet little voice that always melted my heart. "Of course, my love," I answered, heading for the kitchen while Roberta sat on the sofa checking her phone. As I mixed the flour and eggs, I watched my daughter from the kitchen. She was 35. She was wearing a gray suit that probably cost over $500, and her hair was perfectly styled in an elegant bun. She looked successful, prosperous, but I knew that beneath that impeccable appearance was someone who was planning to steal everything I had built over decades. "Mom, have you been sleeping well?" she asked without looking up from her phone. "Just fine, honey. Why do you ask?" "I don't know. You look a little tired. Sometimes I worry about you living alone in this big house. You're not so young anymore." There it was again. That constant insinuation about my age, about my supposed fragility. Now I understood it wasn't genuine concern, but part of her strategy to make me seem incapable. "I'm perfectly fine, Roberta. This house isn't that big and I know it like the back of my hand." She looked up for the first time and gave me an expression I couldn't decipher. "Of course, Mom. I'm just saying that if you ever feel like it's too much responsibility—" "It's not too much responsibility," I interrupted, perhaps with more firmness than I intended. The children ran into the kitchen, drawn by the smell of pancakes. Robert climbed onto a chair and hugged me around the waist. "Grandma, is it true we're all moving to a new house and we're going to live with you?" My heart stopped. I looked at Roberta, who had gone slightly pale. "Robert, I told you not to talk about that yet," she said to her son in a tense voice. "Their plans we're still organizing." "But you said Grandma had already signed the papers and that soon—" "Robert!" Roberta got up from the sofa and came over to us. "Go wash your hands for breakfast." The boy got off the chair, confused, and ran to the bathroom. Carmen followed him, sensing the tension in the air, even though she didn't understand why. Roberta and I were left alone in the kitchen. She was looking at me with a strange expression, as if she were evaluating how much I had understood of what Robert had said. "Kids sometimes say things without thinking," she murmured. "Of course," I replied, keeping my voice neutral. "They're just kids." But on the inside, my mind was working at top speed. Robert had mentioned that I had already signed the papers. That meant they had already put their plan in motion. The mortgage loan they had made me sign was probably already being processed. After breakfast, Roberta took the kids to school. Before she left, she gave me a kiss on the cheek, just as she always did. "Mom, can we have lunch together on Friday? It's been a while since we had a mother-daughter talk." "I'd love that, honey." "Perfect. I'll make a reservation at that Italian restaurant you like so much." When they were gone, I stood in the doorway, watching them drive away in their brand-new silver Toyota Camry, which cost at least $30,000. I wondered how much of their seemingly prosperous life was financed with the money they expected to get from my house. That afternoon, I decided to do something I hadn't done in years. I went through all my financial documents, took out the small safe box I had hidden in my closet, and spread all the papers on the dining room table. There they were, the mortgage loan documents I had signed last month. I read them line by line, word by word. My house, valued at $250,000, had been mortgaged for $180,000. The monthly payments were $1,500. My pension was $800. My savings totaled $15,000. Doing some quick math, I realized I could pay a maximum of 10 installments before running out of money. It was exactly what Samuel had calculated. In less than a year, I would be bankrupt, and my house would be foreclosed on. Then they would show up as saviors, offering to buy the house for a fraction of its true value. I kept looking through the documents. I found something that caught my attention. A life insurance policy Roberto had taken out for me 5 years ago, shortly after I met Samuel. The beneficiary was Roberta, of course, but the amount surprised me. $500,000, a sum that Roberta would collect when I died. Added to the value of my house, we were talking about nearly $1 million that my daughter would inherit. $1 million that she apparently couldn't wait to inherit naturally. That evening, as I was making dinner, my phone rang. It was Samuel. "Lourdes, how are you? It's Samuel, your son-in-law." "Hello, Samuel. I'm fine, thank you." "Listen, I'm calling because I have to pass through your neighborhood tomorrow to visit a client, and I thought I could stop by to say hello. Is it okay if I come around 5 in the afternoon?" My heart started to race. Samuel never visited me alone. He always came with Roberta or the children. "Of course, Samuel. I'll make you some coffee." "Perfect. See you tomorrow, then." I hung up the phone with trembling hands. Samuel wanted to see me alone. After what I had heard the day before, that visit couldn't be a good thing. I spent the night awake, imagining what Samuel might want. Maybe he was coming to evaluate my mental state, to look for evidence that I was no longer capable of taking care of myself. Or maybe he wanted to speed up the process somehow. For the first time in a long time, I felt truly afraid. But also for the first time in years, I felt completely alert. I was no longer the naive grandmother who signed papers without reading them. Now I knew exactly who I was dealing with, and I was starting to plan my own strategy. Samuel's visit was exactly what I had expected, and at the same time, worse than I had imagined. He arrived punctually at 5 in the afternoon, dressed in an elegant suit and carrying a black leather briefcase that seemed to contain important documents. "Lords, it's so nice to see you," he said with that false smile I now recognized perfectly. "You look great, as always." I served him coffee in the living room, the same room where Roberto and I had spent so many nights watching TV, where Roberta had taken her first steps, where we had celebrated every birthday and every Christmas for decades. "Samuel, to what do I owe the honor of your visit?" I asked, maintaining a cordial tone. He took a sip of his coffee and opened his briefcase. "Well, Lords, I've come because I'm concerned about your financial situation. Roberta told me you've been a little confused lately with some numbers, and since I work in finance, I thought I could help." "Confused? I don't know what you mean." "Nothing serious, of course," he hurried to clarify. "Just little things, like when you signed the loan documents last month and asked 3 times what the total amount was." It was a lie. I had only asked once, and just to confirm, but I immediately understood what he was doing, creating a record of supposed mental confusion. "I'm also concerned about you living alone in this big house. A fall, forgetting the stove on. Anything could be dangerous at your age." My age. 70 years old didn't seem so old, especially considering I felt more lucid than ever. But for Samuel's purposes, I was apparently a decrepit old woman. Samuel, I appreciate your concern, but I feel perfectly capable of taking care of my house and my affairs. He took several documents from his briefcase and spread them on the coffee table. Of course, lords, I just want to make sure you fully understand the loan situation we signed. The payments will start next month, and they're $1,500 a month. Yes, I know. And are you clear on how you're going to make those payments? Because according to my calculations, with your $800 monthly pension, I have savings, I interrupted him. True, you have savings, but $15,000 isn't going to last long paying $1,500 a month, maybe 10 months if you don't have any additional expenses. The precision of his numbers confirmed that he had been investigating my financial situation much more deeply than I had imagined. He probably had access to my banking information somehow. "And what do you suggest?" I asked, even though I knew exactly what he was going to propose. "Well, Roberta and I have been talking, and we believe the best solution would be for you to sell this house. It's too big for you alone. It requires a lot of maintenance, and the money from the sale would give you financial peace of mind for the rest of your life." "Sell my house? Don't worry. We wouldn't leave you alone. You could move in with us. The kids adore you, and we'd be delighted to take care of you." There was the perfect trap. First, they convinced me to mortgage my house with an impossible loan. Then they offered to save me by buying it themselves for a fraction of its value. Finally, they would turn me into their financial and emotional dependent. "That's a very generous proposal," I said, "but this house has a lot of sentimental value to me. I understand perfectly, lords, but sometimes we have to make practical decisions, especially at our age." Our age, as if he, at 40, were in the same situation as me. "How much would you be willing to pay for the house?" I asked, pretending to seriously consider his proposal. Samuel smiled, thinking he had managed to convince me. "Well, considering there's a $180,000 mortgage on it, we could offer you $200,000. That would give you $20,000 clear, plus the peace of mind of living with family." $200,000 for a house valued at $250,000. And of that $200,000, $180,000 would go directly to pay off the loan they had made me sign. In the end, I would receive only $20,000 for a house that was worth $250,000. "It's a very generous offer," I repeated, "but I need time to think about it." "Of course, take all the time you need. But not too long, because the loan payments start soon, and we wouldn't want you to fall behind." After Samuel left, I sat in my living room, surrounded by the documents he had left on the table. They were copies of contracts, account statements, and financial projections that showed exactly when I would run out of money. Everything was calculated down to the last penny. Every step of their plan had been meticulously planned. That night, I called Carmen Morales, my best friend for 30 years. Carmen had worked as an accountant before she retired and was one of the few people I trusted completely. "Carmen, I need you to come over tomorrow. There's something I need to show you." "Are you okay, lords? You sound worried." "I'm fine, but I need your opinion on some financial documents." The next day, Carmen arrived early in the morning. I told her everything I had heard at Roberta's house, Samuel's visit, the loan documents. Carmen reviewed everything with her retired accountant's eyes. "Lords, this is terrible," she said after going through all the papers. "They've set a perfect trap for you. Legally, there's nothing illegal in what they've done, but morally, is there anything I can do?" Carmen was pensive for a moment. "Well, technically the loan is legal because you signed it voluntarily, but if you could prove that they deceived you about the purpose of the loan or that they pressured you into signing it, how could I prove that? You'd need evidence, recordings, documents, witnesses, something that shows they lied to you about what the money was for." We spent the rest of the morning reviewing every document, every conversation I could remember. Carmen took detailed notes and helped me organize a timeline of events. Lords, you have to understand that even if you can prove they deceived you, it's going to be a long and expensive legal battle, and they're counting on you not having the resources to fight. "So I should give up?" Carmen looked at me with that determined expression I knew so well. I didn't say that. I said it would be difficult, but not impossible. That afternoon, after Carmen had left, I sat in my backyard, the same yard where Roberto had planted roses for our first anniversary, where Roberta had played on the swing he built with his own hands, where I had spent so many afternoons reading while she did her homework. For the first time since I discovered the betrayal, I cried. I cried for the daughter I thought I had, for the years of sacrifice that had apparently meant nothing to her, for the naivete that had led me to blindly trust someone capable of planning something so cruel. But after I cried, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time, a steely determination. I was not going to be the defenseless victim they expected. If they wanted a fight, they would have one. The next day, I began my own investigation. If Roberta and Samuel had been planning this for months, I also needed a plan. But mine would be different. It would be honest, legal, and above all, it would be my own. My first stop was the bank where I had signed the loan documents. I arrived early, dressed in my best outfit, carrying a folder with all the documents I had. I asked to speak to the manager who had processed my application. "Ms. Owens, how can I help you?" asked Mr. Martinez, a middle-aged man with a professional demeanor. "I'm here because I have some questions about the mortgage loan I signed last month. I'd like to review exactly what I signed." The manager took out my file and started reviewing the documents on his computer. "I see here that you applied for a loan for $180,000 with a mortgage on your property. The stated purpose was family investment. Could you tell me who was present when I signed those documents? According to my records, you were accompanied by your daughter, Roberta Owens, and your son-in-law, Samuel Davies. In fact, Mr. Davies was the one who brought the pre-filled documents and explained the terms of the loan." That was exactly what I needed to know. Samuel had controlled the entire process from the beginning. "Is it normal for someone else to bring the pre-filled documents?" The manager looked slightly uncomfortable. "Well, it's not unusual when family members help with the paperwork, especially when it comes to older people who might need assistance." "Older people who might need assistance," I repeated. "Is that noted somewhere in my file?" No, of course not. You signed all the documents of your own free will. I'm just saying it's common for family members to help with these types of complicated transactions." There it was again, the insinuation that at my age I needed help to understand financial documents. I wondered how many times Samuel had used that narrative during the process. "I'd like to get copies of all the security recordings from the day I signed the loan." The manager looked surprised. "Security recordings? What do you need them for?" "For my personal files. It's my right as a client, isn't it?" "Well, yes, technically, but we'd have to follow certain procedures. Is there a specific problem with your loan?" "There's no problem at all. I just want to make sure I have everything correct." The manager promised me he would contact me in a few days with information on how to obtain the recordings. It wasn't what I wanted to hear, but at least I had planted the seed that I was paying attention to the details. My next stop was Samuel's office. I had never been there, but Carmen had suggested I go to observe how he handled his other clients. His office was in a corporate building downtown on the 12th floor. "Excuse me," I said to the receptionist. "I'd like to speak with Samuel Davies about financial advisory services." "Do you have an appointment?" "No, but I'm family. I'm his mother-in-law, Lords Owens." The receptionist lit up. "Oh, Ms. Owens, Samuel always talks about you. Let me let him know you're here." Interesting. Samuel always talked about me at his office. I wondered exactly what he said. Samuel came out of his office with an expression of surprise he couldn't completely hide. "Lords, what a surprise to see you here. Everything okay?" "Everything's perfect, Samuel. I was just in the area and thought I'd stop by to see your office. I've never seen where you work." He invited me into his office, which was impressive. A mahogany desk, leather armchairs, framed diplomas on the walls. In one corner he had family photos, including one of him with Roberta and the children, and another of all of us together last Christmas. "You have a very elegant office," I said, sitting in one of his leather armchairs. "Thank you. You have to project success to attract good clients." Do a lot of your clients happen to be older people like me? Samuel shifted uncomfortably in his chair. I have clients of all ages. Why do you ask? Just curious. I imagine older people need more help with their finances, right? Well, yes, sometimes, especially when they have valuable properties but limited fixed incomes. Like my situation. Exactly like your situation. I was silent for a moment, observing his office. On his desk, he had several open files. One of them had my name on the label. Samuel, can I ask you something personal? Of course. Do you really think selling my house is the best option for me? He leaned forward, adopting an expression of sincere concern. Lords, I understand it's difficult. That house has a lot of sentimental value, but sometimes we have to make practical decisions. What if I don't want to sell it? Well, that's your decision, of course, but the loan payments are going to start soon, and mathematically, what would happen if I couldn't make the payments? Samuel was quiet for a moment, as if he were calculating how much he should tell me. In case of default, the bank could foreclose on the mortgage. That would mean they would take possession of the house to recover the loan money. And then I would lose my house. Yes, but don't worry, we wouldn't let that happen. Before it got to that point, we could step in and buy the house directly, saving you from all that complicated legal process. There it was. The complete plan, explained by him. I would run out of money to pay the loan, the bank would foreclose on the mortgage, and then Samuel and Roberta would show up as my saviors, buying the house for a fraction of its value. You're very considerate, Samuel. I just want what's best for you, Lords, your family. When I left Samuel's office, I had exactly what I needed, a clear confession of how his plan worked. Now I needed to document it. That afternoon, I went to an electronics store and bought something I never thought I'd need, a small digital recorder that could easily be hidden in my purse. The salesperson, a very kind young man, explained how to use it. It's very easy, ma'am. Just press this button to record and this one to stop. The memory can hold up to 12 hours of audio. I also bought a new cell phone with a call recording feature. If they were going to use technology against me, I would use it too. That night, I practiced using both devices until I felt comfortable with them. Then I called Roberta. Honey, can we move up our lunch? I'd like to talk to you about Samuel's proposal, about selling the house. Of course, Mom. How about tomorrow? Perfect. At the Italian restaurant, just like we agreed. Excellent. I'm sure we're going to find the best solution for everyone. I hung up the phone and checked my recorder one more time. Tomorrow, I would start documenting everything I needed for my defense. For the first time since I had discovered their betrayal, I felt in control of the situation. They had underestimated Grandma Lords. They were about to find out that 70 years of life had taught me more than they thought. Lunch with Roberta was a masterful performance from both sides. She was playing the concerned daughter, and I was playing the naive mother who was finally considering their proposal. The difference was that I knew I was acting. I arrived at the Italian restaurant 15 minutes before our agreed time. I chose a quiet table in a corner, away from the busy tables but with good acoustics. I activated the recorder in my purse and waited. Roberta arrived punctually, dressed in an elegant sundress and high heels. She looked prosperous, confident, like someone who had everything under control. She greeted me with a kiss on the cheek and sat down across from me. Mom, you look good. Have you been sleeping better? Yes, honey. I've been thinking a lot about what you and Samuel proposed. Her eyes lit up immediately. Really? And what have you thought? Well, maybe you're right. Maybe the house is too big for me. Roberta leaned forward, trying to contain her enthusiasm. Mom, I'm so happy to hear you say that. You know we only want what's best for you. The waiter came to take our order. We ordered salads and water. Roberta was too excited about the conversation to pay attention to the food. Tell me more about your plans, I said. If I sell the house, how exactly would the move work? Well, first, we'd have to get an official appraisal of the house, although we've already done some preliminary estimates. What estimates? Samuel consulted with some contacts in the real estate market. Considering the current state of the house and the local market, we believe $200,000 is a fair price. $200,000 for a house valued at $250,000? Mom, you have to understand that selling a house can take months, especially one as old as this one. We're offering you a quick sale, no complications, no real estate agents taking commissions. I see. And the loan money. That's the best part of all. Of the $200,000 we would pay you, $180,000 would go directly to pay off the loan. You'd be left with $20,000 clear, with no debt. $20,000, I repeated the figure as if I were processing it. Is that enough for my expenses? Mom, you won't have any expenses. You're going to live with us. Food, utilities, everything included. The $20,000 would be for your personal expenses, clothes, medications, little luxuries. And what if one day I wanted to be independent again? Roberta was quiet for a moment, as if that possibility had not entered her calculations. Well, I suppose you could if you really wanted to, but honestly, Mom, at your age, I don't know if that would be the most sensible thing to do. There it was again. My age as a limitation, as an excuse for all their decisions. Roberta, can I ask you something personal? Of course. Are you and Samuel having financial problems? The question took her by surprise. Financial problems? No, not at all. Why do you ask? I was just wondering why you're so interested in buying my house specifically. There are a lot of houses for sale in the neighborhood. Mom, we're not interested in just any house. We're interested in taking care of you. The house is just part of the package. The package? I mean the complete solution. You live with us, we take care of everything, and everyone is happy. We ate in silence for a few minutes. Roberta seemed to be calculating something in her head. Mom, there's something else I want to discuss with you. What is it? Samuel and I have been thinking that maybe it would be a good idea for you to sign a legal power of attorney. I almost choked on my salad. A power of attorney? Nothing complicated. Just something that would allow us to help you with banking procedures, paying bills, that kind of thing, especially when you live with us. Why would you need a power of attorney if I'm going to live with you? Well, sometimes there are situations where you need someone to act on your behalf. If you're sick, if there's an emergency, if there are documents to sign when you can't be present. A power of attorney. That would give them complete access to my bank accounts, all my documents, all my financial decisions. It would be the final step to their total control. That's an interesting idea, I said. What kind of power of attorney? Samuel knows an attorney who can prepare everything. It would be a broad power, but with limitations, of course, just to protect you. Protect me from what? Roberta was silent for a moment, as if she had realized she had said too much. From con artists, Mom. There are a lot of people who take advantage of older people. If we have power of attorney, no one else could manipulate you into signing things you don't understand. The irony was perfect. They wanted to protect me from con artists by becoming my official con artists. When could we do that? I asked. The power of attorney? Next week, if you want. Samuel can coordinate everything with the attorney and the house sale. We could also start the paperwork next week. Samuel already has all the documents prepared. Of course he did. He had probably been preparing them for months. Roberta, can I ask you a direct question? Sure. Do you really believe I'm not capable of taking care of myself? She looked at me with an expression that tried to be compassionate but didn't reach her eyes. Mom, it's not that you're not capable. It's that at your age things get more complicated. Your memory isn't the same. Making financial decisions becomes more difficult. My memory isn't the same? Well, you know, little things like when you forgot your glasses last week. My glasses, the very ones I had intentionally forgotten, the same glasses that had allowed me to discover their entire conspiracy. You're right, I said. Sometimes I do forget things. Exactly. That's why it's so important to have family to take care of you. We finished lunch talking about logistical details. Where would I sleep in their house? What furniture could I take? What would the daily routine be like? Roberta had answers for everything, as if she had been planning this for a long time. When we said goodbye in the restaurant parking lot, she gave me a hug that was longer than usual. "Mom, I'm so happy we finally talked about this. It's going to be wonderful having you live with us." "I'm excited too, honey." That night at my house, I listened to the full recording of our lunch. Everything was there. The constant, subtle pressure, the insinuations about my supposed mental incapacity, the power of attorney proposal, the exact numbers of their financial offer. But the most important thing was Roberta's tone, the calculated coldness behind her words of concern, the way she talked about my future as if it had already been decided without any real participation from me. The next day, I called Carmen to tell her about the lunch. "Carmen, I need you to come with me to talk to an attorney. Are you ready to fight?" "I'm ready to protect myself." Carmen knew Paulo Martinez, an attorney specializing in family law and financial abuse cases against the elderly. He was 60 years old. He had worked on similar cases, and most importantly, had a reputation for being honest and direct. The appointment was for Friday morning. I brought all the recordings, all the documents, and a detailed timeline of events that Carmen had helped me prepare. Paulo listened to everything without interrupting. When I finished explaining the situation, he was thoughtful for several minutes. "Ms. Owens, what you're describing is a classic case of family financial abuse. The problem is that legally, everything they've done so far is technically legal." "So I can't do anything?" "I didn't say that. I said it's complicated, but the recordings you have are important evidence, especially the conversation where they discuss their plan to make you seem mentally incapable." "What do you recommend?" "First, do not sign anything else. No power of attorney, no sales documents, nothing. Second, we're going to need more evidence of their plan. Third, we need to document that you are completely mentally competent." "How do I do that?" "A full psychological evaluation. We can also do a financial capacity evaluation. If we can prove that you're a victim of financial abuse, we can invalidate the mortgage loan." "How much would all that cost?" Paulo looked at me seriously. $10,000 up front, possibly more if the case gets complicated. $10,000, a considerable sum from my limited savings, but it was my only chance to keep my house and my independence. "When can we start?" "Tomorrow, if you want." For the first time in weeks, I felt a real sense of hope. I had a plan, I had evidence, and I had an attorney willing to help me. Roberta and Samuel thought they had everything under control. They were about to discover that they had gravely underestimated their victim. The psychological evaluation was scheduled for the following Monday. Paulo had recommended Dr. Teresa Bravo, a psychologist specializing in mental capacity evaluations for legal cases. For 3 hours, I underwent tests for memory, logical reasoning, decision-making ability, and financial comprehension. "Ms. Owens," Dr. Bravo said to me at the end of the session, "I want you to know that your results are far above average for your age group. Your mental capacity is completely normal, even superior in many areas." Those words gave me immense satisfaction. For weeks, Roberta and Samuel had been insinuating that my mind was deteriorating. Now I had scientific evidence to the contrary. While waiting for the official results, I decided to continue my investigation. Paulo had suggested I try to get more evidence of Roberta and Samuel's true intentions. I needed to prove not only that they had deceived me, but that they had planned to do so from the very beginning. On Tuesday morning, I called Roberta. "Honey, I've been thinking about everything we talked about. I think you're right." "Mom, that's wonderful. Are you ready to start the paperwork?" "Yes, but first I'd like to better understand some details. Could we all get together? You, Samuel, and me, of course. How about tonight at your house? We can have dinner together and discuss everything calmly." "Perfect." That afternoon, before going to Roberta's house, I did something I had never done before. I called a private investigator. Paulo had given me the contact for Roman Morales, a former police officer who now worked on civil cases. "Mr. Morales, I need you to investigate the finances of my daughter and son-in-law. Specifically, I want to know if they have debts, financial problems, or if they've done this before, convincing elderly family members to sign mortgage loans." Roman explained that the investigation would take at least a week and cost $1,000. It was another considerable expense, but I felt it was necessary. I arrived at Roberta's house at 7 in the evening. Samuel was already there, and they both greeted me with radiant smiles. It was as if they had won the lottery. "Lords, we're so happy you've made this decision," Samuel said to me while pouring a glass of wine. "Mom, it's going to be so beautiful having you live with us. The kids are so excited." We had roasted chicken with vegetables for dinner. The conversation was light at first, but it gradually moved toward the topics I needed to discuss. "Samuel, explain again how the power of attorney would work." Samuel took a folder from his briefcase. "It's very simple, Lords. This document would give me the authority to handle your financial affairs when you can't." "When I can't?" "Well, if you're sick, if you have to travel, if there are complicated situations that require technical knowledge." "What kind of authority exactly?" "The power to sign banking documents, make transfers, pay bills, manage investments." "Could you sell properties?" Samuel and Roberta exchanged a quick glance. "Well, technically yes," Samuel admitted, "but only in very specific circumstances." "Such as?" "If you were hospitalized for a long period and we needed to sell something to pay for medical expenses, or if you were mentally incapacitated." Another exchange of glances. "That would be a possibility," Samuel said carefully. "But we hope it never comes to that." "Of course. And who would determine if I'm mentally incapacitated?" "Well, it would normally be a doctor or a panel of doctors." "Doctors you would choose?" Samuel was getting clearly uncomfortable. "Lourdes, why all these questions? I thought you decided to trust us." "I do trust you. I just want to understand everything completely." Roberta intervened. "Mom, I think you're overthinking the details. The important thing is that we're going to take care of you." "You're right, honey. Tell me about the house sale process." Samuel perked up again. "I already have all the documents prepared. We just need to get the official appraisal and sign the purchase agreement." "Who would do the appraisal?" "I have contacts in the real estate business, reliable people who can do a fair appraisal." "People who work with you regularly?" "Well, yes. It's better to work with people you know." "I understand. And the price of $200,000 is already confirmed?" "Yes. That would be our final price, even if the official appraisal comes in higher." Samuel was quiet for a moment. "Lords, the real estate market is very volatile. A high appraisal doesn't guarantee you can get that price in a real sale. But you're not regular buyers, you're family." "Exactly. That's why we're offering you a guaranteed sale." "What if I wanted to put the house on the open market?" Roberta and Samuel looked at each other again, and this time the tension was palpable. "Mom," Roberta said in a slightly tense voice, "I thought you had decided this was the best option." "I am decided. I'm just exploring all the possibilities. The problem with the open market," Samuel said, "is that it takes time. Time you don't have, considering the loan payments." "How much time?" "It could be months. Meanwhile, the payments pile up, the interest grows. And if I can't make the payments while I'm waiting for a buyer, that's where the situation gets complicated," Samuel admitted. "The bank could start foreclosure proceedings, and then you'd lose the house without receiving anything." "Well, not exactly nothing. You'd receive any difference between the value of the house and the loan amount after the bank takes its commissions, interest, and legal costs." Samuel nodded reluctantly. "How much do you figure I'd receive in that scenario?" "Probably very little. Maybe $5,000 or $10,000. "Compared to the $20,000 you're offering me." "Exactly." There it was, the complete scheme, explained by them. They had put me into a loan that was impossible to pay, were pressuring me to sell quickly at a low price, and were presenting their offer as a generous rescue. "One more question," I said. "What would happen if I died before selling the house?" The question took them completely by surprise. Roberta visibly paled. "Mom, why would you ask that?" "Just morbid curiosity. At my age, you think about these things." Samuel cleared his throat. Well, in that case, the house would be part of your inheritance. We would have to pay off the outstanding loan, and the rest would be the inheritance. You would have to pay off the loan as your heirs? Yes. And if you couldn't pay it off, you'd have to sell the house to cover the debt at whatever price you could get? Yes. Interesting. And the life insurance policy? They both froze. It was clear they didn't expect me to know about the policy. What policy? Roberta asked in a weak voice. The $500,000 policy I signed 5 years ago. Samuel cleared his throat again. Oh, yes, that policy. Well, that money would be to cover funeral expenses and $500,000 for funeral expenses? And to help the family during the grieving period. I see. I got up from the table. Well, I think I have all the information I needed. So, are we ready to proceed? Samuel asked anxiously. Let me think about it tonight. I'll give you a final answer tomorrow. When I got to my house that night, I had exactly what I needed. A complete recording of Samuel explaining every detail of their plan, including how I would be left with almost nothing if I tried to sell the house on my own, and how they would benefit massively if I died. The next day, I took the recording to Paolo. Ms. Owens, this is pure gold, he said, after listening to the whole conversation. We have clear evidence of financial manipulation and undue pressure. This is enough to invalidate the loan. With this and the results of your psychological evaluation, I think we have a very solid case. That afternoon, Roman Morales called me with preliminary information from his investigation. Ms. Owens, I found something interesting. Your son-in-law has debts of over $100,000, credit cards, personal loans, late payments on his business. $100,000? And there's more. I found evidence that he did something similar with another client 2 years ago, a widow in her 80s who lost her house under very similar circumstances. My blood ran cold. I wasn't Samuel's first victim. There was another woman, another family destroyed by his greed. Can you get more information about that case? I'm on it. The woman passed away last year, but her sister is alive and very willing to talk. For the first time since I had discovered the betrayal, I felt something more than personal pain. I felt a responsibility to other potential victims. If I didn't stop Samuel and Roberta now, there would be more families destroyed in the future. It was time to go on the offensive. On Thursday morning, I woke up with a mental clarity I hadn't felt in months. Today was the day everything would change. Paolo had scheduled a meeting for 10 in the morning at his office, where we would present all the collected evidence to the district attorney. Roman Morales had found devastating information about Samuel, and I had the recordings that completely exposed their plan. Before I left the house, I did something I had been putting off. I called Roberta to give her my final answer about selling the house. Good morning, honey. I'm calling because I've made my final decision about everything we've been discussing. Mom, that's so exciting. Did you decide to go ahead with the sale and the move? Samuel and I have been preparing all the final documents, and the room that would be yours is almost ready. The kids even picked out new curtains so you'd feel more comfortable. Roberta, I've decided that I'm not going to sell the house. I'm not going to sign the power of attorney, and I'm not going to move in with you. I've been reflecting deeply on this whole situation, and I've realized that I don't need the help you're offering me. The silence on the other end of the line was so long that for a moment I thought the call had been disconnected. Mom, I don't understand. I thought we had an agreement. I thought you understood that this was the best solution for everyone. You can't make the loan payments, and without our help, you're going to lose the house anyway. Don't you remember the numbers we went over? Your pension doesn't even cover half the monthly payment. I remember the numbers perfectly, Roberta. I also remember a lot of other things that have been happening lately. What do you mean by that? Mom, you're worrying me. Maybe we should talk in person. Sometimes things get misunderstood over the phone, especially when important decisions are involved. There are no misunderstandings, honey. I've consulted with independent professionals about my financial and legal situation. It turns out I have more options than the ones you explained to me. Another long pause. When Roberta spoke again, her voice had lost all the artificial warmth she had been using for weeks. Independent professionals? Who have you been talking to? Mom, I hope they haven't filled your head with confusing ideas. There are a lot of people who take advantage of old people by promising them magical solutions that don't exist. It's funny you mention that, because that's exactly what I've discovered, that there are people who take advantage of old people, people you trust, people in your own family. Mom, you're scaring me. You sound very different, very aggressive. Are you sure you're feeling well? Maybe we should take you to the doctor for a general checkup. I feel perfectly well, Roberta. In fact, I've undergone full medical and psychological evaluations. The results show that my mental capacity is completely intact, more than intact, according to the specialists. Evaluations? What evaluations? Who asked you to do that? Mom, you're really worrying me. I think someone is manipulating you, filling you with distrust toward your own family. No one is manipulating me, honey. I've simply opened my eyes to things that were happening around me, like that conversation I overheard at your house 2 weeks ago when I went back to get my glasses. The silence that followed was different, more tense, more charged. When Roberta spoke again, her voice was completely changed. What conversation? The conversation where you and Samuel were discussing how your mother's house would soon be yours and how I wouldn't have the money to defend myself with an attorney. The conversation where you planned to make me seem mentally incapable to speed up the whole process. Mom, I don't know what you're talking about. I think you're confusing things, mixing real conversations with, well, maybe with dreams or misunderstandings. I'm not confusing anything, Roberta. I have recordings of that conversation. I also have recordings of my conversations with you and with Samuel over the last few weeks. Conversations where you explain your entire plan in detail. Recordings? Mom, are you telling me you've been recording our private conversations? That's disturbing. That's not something a person in their right mind would do. On the contrary, it's exactly what a person who has realized they are being conned by their own family would do. Conned? Mom, we're your family. Everything we've done has been for your own good. If you can't see that, then you really do need medical help. What I need is legal protection. That's why I've hired an attorney specializing in cases of financial abuse against older people. An attorney. Mom, this has gone too far. Whoever is putting these ideas into your head is hurting you. They're driving you away from your family, making you paranoid and distrustful. My attorney's name is Paulo Martinez. This morning, we're going to file a formal lawsuit against you and Samuel for fraud, financial manipulation, and conspiracy to commit theft. We're also going to request the invalidation of the mortgage loan for having been obtained under false pretenses. This is ridiculous. Mom, you can't be serious. We're your family. We would never hurt you. Everything we've proposed has been to protect and take care of you. I've also hired a private investigator who has discovered some very interesting information about Samuel's finances. Apparently, he has debts of over $100,000. He also found evidence that he did something similar with another elderly woman 2 years ago. Another woman? Mom, those are slanders. You're repeating malicious gossip from people who want to harm us. The woman's name was Elena Vargas. She was 80 years old, a widow, and she lost her house in the exact same way you planned for me to lose mine. The difference is that she didn't have a chance to defend herself. Mom, please stop. What you're doing is going to destroy our family. The kids are going to suffer. I'm going to suffer. You're going to suffer. All because of misunderstandings and paranoia. The only ones who are going to suffer are you when you face the legal consequences of what you've done and what you plan to continue doing. Legal consequences? Mom, we haven't done anything illegal. Helping you get a loan isn't illegal. Offering to buy your house isn't illegal. Worrying about your well-being isn't illegal. Deceiving me about the purpose of the loan is illegal. Conspiring to make me seem mentally incompetent? Yes, that's illegal. Planning to benefit from my death for economic gain? Yes, that's illegal. Benefit from your death? Mom, where are you getting these horrible ideas? We have never wished for anything bad to happen to you. But you have calculated exactly how much you would gain if I died. 500,000 from the life insurance, plus the value of the house, minus the loan debts. Everything calculated down to the penny. The life insurance is normal protection. All responsible families have life insurance. A life insurance I didn't remember signing, but which I found in my documents. An insurance I had signed, coincidentally, shortly after I met Samuel. Mom, listen to yourself. You're sounding like a paranoid, distrustful person who sees conspiracies everywhere. This isn't you. The mom I know trusts her family, loves her family. The mom you knew was naive and trusting. The woman I am now has learned to protect herself from those who want to take advantage of her, even when those people share her blood. If you really go through with this, if you really file lawsuits against us, you're going to destroy any possibility of reconciliation. The grandchildren you love so much will never be able to see you again. Are you really willing to sacrifice that? I'm willing to sacrifice anything to maintain my dignity and my independence. And as for my grandchildren, someday they'll understand that their grandmother fought to defend herself from those who tried to steal everything she had built over a lifetime of work. Mom, I'm giving you one last chance to reconsider. Cancel that meeting with the attorney, fire the investigator, and we can talk again as a civilized family. The only chance I'm giving you is to find a good attorney, because you're going to need one. I hung up the phone and sat in my kitchen for a few minutes, processing what had just happened. For the first time in weeks, I had spoken to my daughter without pretending, without acting, without pretending I didn't know what was going on. The feeling of liberation was immense. Half an hour later, my phone rang again. It was Samuel. Lords, I just spoke with Roberta. I think there's been a very serious misunderstanding, and I'd like us to meet to clear it up. I'm sure we can solve this without the need for attorneys or lawsuits. There's nothing to solve, Samuel. Everything is perfectly clear. Lords, I understand you feel confused and maybe a little overwhelmed by all the financial information we've been handling. These topics can be complicated, and it's natural for doubts to arise. I'm not confused, Samuel. I am completely lucid and completely informed about what you have been planning. What have we been planning, Lords? All we've done is try to help you find a solution to your financial problem. My financial problem that you created by convincing me to sign a loan that was impossible to pay. That loan was your decision. We simply facilitated the process. A process where you controlled every step, from the documents to the bank where it was signed. Lords, I think someone is giving you incorrect information. Maybe we should sit down with a neutral mediator to clear up all these misunderstandings. The only mediator I need is a judge. A judge? Lords, this doesn't have to go this far. Think about the children. Think about Roberta. A legal lawsuit is going to be traumatic for the whole family. You should have thought about that before you planned to steal my house. No one is trying to steal anything from you. We're offering you a fair solution to a real problem. A solution that benefits you much more than me. Lords, if you really go through with this, you're going to lose much more than money. You're going to lose your family. I already lost my family the day they decided to betray me. Now, I'm just getting my dignity back. That was the last conversation I had with Samuel as the son-in-law I thought I knew. In 2 hours, I would see him again, but this time in front of a prosecutor and with all the cards on the table. 6 months after that last phone call with Samuel, I'm sitting in my backyard, drinking coffee and reading the morning paper. It's a beautiful spring morning, and for the first time in a long time, I feel a genuine peace in my heart. The legal process ended 3 weeks ago, and the results exceeded even Paolo's most optimistic expectations. The lawsuit we filed was devastating for Samuel and Roberta. The recordings I had obtained during those weeks of silent investigation turned out to be irrefutable evidence of a conspiracy to commit fraud. But what really sealed their fate was the information Roman Morales discovered about their previous activities. Elena Vargas hadn't been their only victim. Over the last 5 years, Samuel had executed similar schemes with at least 4 other elderly people, always following the same pattern, convincing them to sign impossible mortgage loans, then offering to buy their properties at prices far below their true value. The district attorney decided to prosecute the case as an organized criminal scheme. Samuel was arrested at his office on a Tuesday morning in front of all his clients and employees. The charges included financial fraud, elder abuse, criminal conspiracy, and illegal practice of financial activities without an appropriate license. Roberta was arrested the same day at her house, charged with complicity in all of Samuel's crimes. The police investigation discovered that Samuel's debts were even greater than what Roman had initially found. He owed over $200,000 to various banks and private lenders. His elegant office, his brand new car, his seemingly prosperous lifestyle, everything was financed with money he didn't have and with the profits obtained from conning vulnerable elderly people. During the trial, which lasted 3 weeks, the depth of their manipulation was revealed. Samuel had studied psychology before dedicating himself to finance, and he used that knowledge to identify and exploit the emotional vulnerabilities of his victims. He had detailed profiles of older people with valuable properties but limited incomes. He had chosen me specifically after investigating my financial and family situation for months. The most painful part of the trial was listening to the testimonies of other victims. Elena Vargas had lost not only her house, but also her life savings. She died in a nursing home, with no money, no home, no family to support her. Her younger sister, Carmen Vargas, testified through tears about how Elena had spent her last months wondering how she had been so naive, blaming herself for having trusted the wrong people. There were other equally devastating cases. A man of 75 who had lost the house where he had raised his 5 children. A woman of 80 who had had to move in with distant relatives after Samuel convinced her to mortgage her property for a supposed family investment that never existed. Roberta's role in all of this was especially hurtful to me. During the trial, it was revealed that she had been the one who had initially investigated me, gathering information about my finances, my routines, my emotional vulnerabilities. It had been her who had suggested I would be an ideal victim because I was a widow, I lived alone, I had few close friends, and most of all, because I trusted her unconditionally. The documents seized during the investigations included emails between Roberta and Samuel, where they discussed strategies to manipulate me. In one of those emails, dated 6 months before they proposed the loan, Roberta wrote, "My mother is perfect for this. She's sentimental, trusting, and she's always done everything I ask. Plus, she has that giant house that's worth a fortune, and she barely makes $800 from her pension. It's going to be like taking candy from a baby." Reading those words in court in front of a judge and a jury was one of the most painful moments of my entire life. I had not only lost my daughter, but I had discovered that the daughter I thought I had never really existed. During the trial, Roberta tried to present herself as another one of Samuel's victims, claiming he had manipulated and pressured her into participating in the scheme. But the evidence clearly showed that she had been an active and enthusiastic participant from the beginning. In fact, according to financial records, she had been receiving regular payments from Samuel for the last 2 years, money from his previous cons. The sentence was severe but fair. Samuel received 15 years in prison and was ordered to pay full restitution to all his victims. His license to work in financial services was permanently revoked. Roberta received 8 years in prison and must also pay restitution. They both lost all their assets, which were seized to partially compensate the victims. In my specific case, I not only fully recovered my house, but I also received additional compensation for emotional damages. The mortgage loan was completely invalidated, and the bank, which had processed it without properly verifying the legitimacy of the transaction, also had to pay a substantial fine. The $500,000 life insurance policy was canceled immediately. It turned out that Samuel had been paying the premiums using money from his other scams, hoping to recover that investment when I died. The discovery of that particular detail added additional charges related to conspiracy to benefit from my death. The children, Robert and Carmen, went to live with Samuel's sister, who apparently had no knowledge of her brother's criminal activities. Through my attorney, I've established an educational fund for them, because despite everything that has happened, they are still my grandchildren, and they are not to blame for their parents' decisions. I haven't had direct contact with them since the day of the arrest. It's one of the most painful losses of this entire experience, but Paulo has advised me to wait until they are of legal age to try to reestablish a relationship. For now, the educational fund is my way of showing them that despite everything, their grandmother still loves them. The house that Samuel and Roberta coveted so much is still mine. I've done some renovations with part of the money from the legal compensation. I painted the walls, changed some furniture, planted new flowers in the garden. It was important for me to transform the spaces where so much manipulation and deception had been lived. Carmen Morales is still my best friend and now comes to visit me twice a week. We've developed a beautiful routine. On Tuesdays we cook together, and on Fridays we go to the market and then have lunch at different restaurants in town. She helped me enormously throughout the entire legal process, not only with her financial knowledge, but simply by being there when I needed someone to trust. I've met other victims of Samuel's through the legal process, and we formed an informal support group. We meet once a month for lunch and talk about our experiences. It's comforting to know that I'm not alone and that other people have managed to rebuild their lives after similar betrayals. I've also started doing volunteer work with an organization that helps older people protect themselves from financial scams. I share my story in seminars and workshops, teaching others how to recognize the signs of financial manipulation. It's my way of honoring Elena Vargas's memory and helping to prevent others from going through what we went through. Paulo has become more than just my attorney. He's a genuine friend. He helped me not only win the legal case, but also regain confidence in my own judgment. He reminded me that having been deceived didn't make me stupid or weak. It just made me human. This morning, as I read the paper in my garden, I see a small article about Samuel's denied parole. Apparently, he had been trying to get out of prison early by claiming good behavior, but the judge considered that he still poses a danger to the community. I'm glad to know that justice is running its course. In my moments of greatest tranquility, like this one, I sometimes feel a deep sadness for the daughter I lost. Not the Roberta who conspired to steal from me, but the little girl I thought I had raised, the young woman I thought had become an honorable woman. That person probably never existed, but the pain of losing her is real all the same. However, I also feel something I haven't felt in years. Pride in myself. Pride in having had the strength to defend myself when I discovered the betrayal. Pride in having fought for my dignity and my independence. Pride in having turned a traumatic experience into an opportunity to help others. I finish my coffee and head to the kitchen to prepare lunch. Carmen will be here soon, and we've planned to try a new pasta recipe she found in a magazine. It's a Tuesday like any other, but it's also another day of the new life I've built after discovering that the people I trusted the most were planning to destroy me. Today I am alone in this house, but for the first time in a long time, I am alone by choice, not by deception. And that difference changes everything. Did you like my story, and which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you liked the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story with love and respect.